Okay, so as a beginner, there are certain aspects of equipment you'll definitely need.
Right.
Let's start at the kind of the basics. You'll need a suit, whatever happens. So you've got, I mean, I started with this sort of suit, which is actually just a...
So it's like a jacket?
Just a jacket, a very basic jacket, which ties up at the bottom.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, now you can get it elasticated or you can get it on a tie pull. I started with a tie pull, made a mistake of not tying it off once, and you get a rather sore belly for the payment doing
okay,
that.
so they all went up inside the jacket.
Yes. Now, not everyone's going to do that, so don't worry about it, but people like me will. So I actually progressed from that to more like a suit. So, you know, a lot longer one, it covers down, right down to your ankles.
So like full overalls, basically.
Exactly. Then you have no worry. You have no worry about that. So really that comes down to personal preference as to what you know, how you want to work with the bees. I mean, for speed, you use a jacket because it's a lot easier, a lot quicker.
Rather than stepping into everything.
And it's a lot cooler as well.
And is the hood bit, I mean, they're different. Is that any reason for that, or is just
completely different? A lot of it comes down to personal preference. This is kind of rather traditional with the round, and it does keep the bees a little bit away from your face.
Right.
These, so-called the sheriff suit is what they're called. The sheriff design is such that you actually a lot closer to the bee. So some people don't like it too much.
Because you can hear it more. And
yeah.
Right.
But these tend to be kind of picking up a little bit more steam now. They seem to be used a lot more. I use this sort of style now. I prefer it to this. It feels a little bit more real for me.
Right.
But you have an option. There's no great advantage or disadvantage to all. It's just this seems to be a little bit more kind of fashionable now. This is a little bit more traditional. So.
Yeah, Miss Marple type thing.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly that. But so really, you've got your choice. You can your jackets. You've got your full suits. You've got your round. You've got
colour.
Your,
make any difference?
Again, very traditional. There seems to be a move now towards slightly more colourful. Bee suits. I mean, you can get them in them. This is like a khaki colour. You can get them in mushroom. Get them in lilac.
Really colourful. Mushroom
pink.
Or pink.
Yeah, pink and powder blue. I've heard as well.
So it has no
bearing. I mean, there is certain kind of semblances of bright. It's very, very bright. It can attract the insects a little bit. Slightly muted colours. It is a little bit easier. So, I mean, again, personal preference a little bit more. The other two kind of core products I would come on to, which you'll see every beekeeper, suit, this funny little object.
I have to say, it looks like something that I'll be digging buttercups out of me paving with.
Yeah, I've never tried it, but it's yeah, exactly that. So a Hive Tool and a smoker, they're the two other core products. But the Hive Tool is like your friend. I mean, if you're going to go into a hive, this is what you need. It's got various kind of designs. This is a rather standard one. You've also got one which is called a J-shaped tool, which hasn't got this funny little edge on it. But really, in essence, it's used to open up the hive and manipulate the frames.
Right.
Because the bees will go in and they will glue everything down. They want to keep...
Right, so things won't just slide out easily?
No, not at all. And, you know, I mean, you can go in there and you can break it all off, but the bees are going to know about it. You know, all the vibrations and the banging and everything, they're going to know.
Not a good move.
No, so this is all really about trying to very gently manipulate and coerce the frames out. And because they've been stuck down, the bees want to keep everything wind tight and water tight, which is where propolis comes in, which is like bee glue, basically, in a nutshell. So you use this to move them around, you'll use this to hook in and underneath so you can lift it all up.
Nice and easily.
Absolutely. And
it's a nice bright colour.
yeah, I went for the brightest one possible because I tend to drop mine quite a lot. So really bright colour, if it gets hidden in the grass, you'll find it easily. Okay, so that's the Hive Tool. Now the next kind of friend of yours while you're tending the bees is a smoker.
Right.
I mean, generally this is kind of like the archetypal sign of being a beekeeper is having your a smoker lit, and it's lovely, and it really is lovely on a nice day to have your smoker lit and you know all the smoke coming out. But really, I mean, the idea of this is to use a certain sort of fuel, which you will put into the smoker, get it lit, the smoke will come out, and basically you will always smoke a hive before you go into it.
Right.
And
before you do any work to it.
Yeah, exactly. Because what it will make it, the bees kind of assume is that their hive, rather cruelly, is on fire. So they will rush back into their hive rather than coming out to attack you, and will go in and gorge themselves on honey. Basically, because they want to get out of the hive. If it's on fire, they want to get out. So that is what your smoker will do.
So that just makes them a bit more sedate. They're too busy doing something else rather than worrying about what you're doing. Yeah,
exactly that. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter if you're beekeeping in the UK with a smoker or in Africa with burnt cow dung, and that's what they'll use out in Africa. It's the same method.
Right.
Calms the bees down, makes them kind of concentrate on something else other than, crikey, there's someone going into my hive.
Okay.
But I mean, you know, as I said, you know, cow dung in Africa, I mean, we use a variety of different things. I mean, you could use just dried out twigs, for example, which you pick off the floor, and a lot of people tend to. I actually use this, which is like a cocoa shell.
Right, okay.
Basically.
We use that for mulch in the garden.
Well, there you are. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't know you use it for beekeeping as well, but it's all to do with the smoke that it emits. Because one of the biggest problems, like using kind of you know, dried twigs and everything, is that the smoke emitted is quite warm.
Okay, so
I never knew there was a warm smoke and a cold smoke. But you know, this smoke is it burns well. It burns long. Because I can tell you that the last thing you want is going into your
smoke
hive.
running out.
Yeah, that's the last thing you want. I mean, and it always seems to happen on the worst hives. Your smoker runs out midway through.
Right.
But with something like a cocoa shell, it burns for a long time and it emits quite a cool smoke. So not to alarm the bees too much, because that's again not what you really want to do. Okay, so we've got the core components so far: the suit, your smoker, hive tool.
Yep.
But then you've also got the other elements to look after. I mean, your fingers and your thumb, that's quite important. Your feet.
Right.
Bizarrely, trust me, with someone who's get stung on their ankle quite a few times, you want to make sure that's all protected. But if we start on the gloves, I mean, you can have a variety of different gloves, as with everything in beekeeping. I, at the moment, tend to be using more kind of leather, quite supple gloves like this.
Oh, they are, aren't they? Almost like driving gloves, aren't they?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I have to say, I started with rubber gloves, but I mean, some people even just use just simple surgeon's gloves.
Really thin, then?
Tiny, I mean, really, really thin. But I mean, a lot of experienced beekeepers prefer that because it means it's quite easy to feel what the bees are doing and understand the frames, and so you don't get clumsy with it.
Right.
A lot of beginner beekeepers tend to prefer much thicker gloves because they're so frightened about getting stung.
Stung. I'm with them there.
Yeah, and I am. I mean, I have a feisty hive, and so, you know, I knew that I'm going to get kind of stung quite a lot. So this actually does stop a sting.
Right.
So that's why I prefer to go to these. But, I mean, you know, I've mentioned that I get stung quite a lot on the ankle, so, you know, the traditional welly boot, however fetching it is, also goes a long way.
Right, so you need to be tucking your trousers inside the wellies?
Yeah, I mean, some people just, you know, use regular trainers and tuck it in. But you get these certain bees, you've got like these guard bees and house bees and every sort of bee in the hive. You also get what they call ankle biters.
I think you're making it up now, James.
No, I swear I'm not. Well, I've seen them. But they literally will fly out of the hive and come at your ankles if you're not careful and you've upset them and you've kind of banged them a little few times.
Right.
So the welly comes in handy, and I've learnt that from experience. But as you said...
So basically all gaps, like sleeves, trousers, t-shirts, tucked in, sealed up.
Absolutely. And I mean, even the gloves, I mean, that's why they're so long, because they will come over your sleeve and protect you that way, because bees basically like dark, warm places, and they'll crawl there. You've then got other little extras like, for example, a bee brush.
Right.
It looks rather normal, doesn't it? But it's a very kind of soft kind of hair to it.
Okay, yeah, it is, isn't it?
And basically this is just to make sure the bees are off. So when you're putting frames back in or boxes back on, there's always little stragglers which are around the edge, and you just want, you know, you don't want to kill them if you can avoid it. So you just kind of brush them off and put it back on. So you've got the bee brush, you've got things like queen cages. Now, there are various different sorts of queen cage, I have to say, but this is the one that I use personally, which you use it to mark the queen.
How?
Well, you basically guide her in here, you kind of, you know, hurry her along, get into the bit, and you just use this little plunger very carefully to push her up into it, trap her into this little kind of, you know, matrix, I suppose, get a marker pen, and just dab her abdomen.
Oh, so she gets like a little crisscrossy on her.
Exactly. Well, no, it's literally just a little ball,
spot.
And it just helps you to identify her into the hive. But there are various different sorts, but you've got to be very careful. So as a beginner, you don't necessarily need this, but then there are other things like drawing pins you might want as well, just to mark out where the queen was, and little things like that, but not a necessity. But one bit of advice is, if you start, is get a bee box to put everything in.
Is that just a normal box that you can lid on it?
Literally that. So you can take it to the hives. Because the worst thing is that when you get there and you're running out of fuel, for example, backup fuel and all this lot, so it's always worthwhile. So that's the sort of equipment you'd need just to run a regular inspection. Then you've got to think about other equipment like for honey extraction, for example, where, you know, you can only buy it yourself. You can buy honey extractors, decapping knives, you name it. You would be surprised at the amount of kit you can get, but just hire it from your local station is one way of doing it. You know, it's very, very cheap to do.
To keep the costs down.
Exactly. And then probably one of the largest expenses you've got to kind of think about is your hive.
The bees need somewhere to live. Yeah, I've forgotten about that bit with all the others.
Yeah, and there's quite a variety of them, believe me.